Hi everybody, I'm back at Yvonne with Western Star Art and Wear, and I'm getting ready to read chapter 23 of my dad's book, Up from the Dust. If you've been following along, you know this is a book that he wrote many years ago, and it's about him growing up in the 20s and 30s. And we are over halfway through the book, and so we'll get started. I made it on home, and Ma had pintos for supper and biscuits. I love them beans with onions in them, and cheese and a half-ripe tomato. That was fitting victuals for a sharecropper son and a fellow that had just entered the 4th grade in the uptown school. Pearl came home from work, and I asked her about the books. Yes, sir, Skeeter, I have the books that I had studied in the uptown school. When I went to the mill, they furnished the book. I was a-coming to work for them, and Pa had already promised them that. She looked them up and gave them to me. We looked on the list and found the right ones that I needed for school. She had some colors and pencils too, but I had to go to the store and get some paper, but it only cost a dime, and I had that. That took a load off of my mind. I could hear old Miss Darnell telling me that if I didn't have any books, to get lost and to not come back. The next morning I was up early and washed my face and hands in the pan on the outside of the house. Had breakfast of fat meat, fried sow bellies, that is now, I understand, we sell it all to the Russians. No wonder they're beating us out, and lasses with butter in them. We had coffee from day one in our house. After getting all victualed up, I headed for the uptown school with my head held high and sporting a linden-burned helmet and all them books under my arms. I just bet old Miss Darnell would be surprised to see me with all the books and paper too. This would drive her into an early retirement. I thought since I was going to have to use them new outhouses, I might just as well get used to it. So when I got on the school grounds, I made for the outhouses. There was one of the old guys from the 8th grade in there, and he was supposed to be the instructor for the new commodes. So he asked me right off, "You ever use one of these new commodes?" he asked. "No, I haven't," I lowed. "But that's why I'm here, is to learn new things." "All right, here's how you do it." And he sat down on the lid, and his weight pulled it down on the commode. He sat there for a few seconds, and then he got up pretty fast, and the commode flushed as soon as the lid flew up, or the seat, that is. There was no shield in between the seat or anything. You were sitting right out in the open in a place where no matter who came in, there you was. I had to go pretty bad, so I moved down to sort of the end of the stools. There must have been a dozen in that place, and a couple of the urinals, too. I got my britches down and sort of backed into the seat thing. I was not very heavy, so I had a hard time of getting her to come down on the proper place. After I had finished my thing, I was planning on how I was going to get off of this thing without it throwing water up my butt and wetting my britches. So I wiped and started to go forward on the little thing, and a big flush, whoosh, before I could get away from the water. The water hit me right head on and flushed my behind. I rolled off on the left side and saved it a-wetting my pants with the dirty water. I was a-trying to dry myself off with the paper and get my britches up and buttoned when this feller that was in charge come back to me. "It's just what I expected from a cottonhead. You might as well go in the woods as to come up here. You'll never be anything but a lint dogger, no matter how they try to educate you. It just hain't in you to be anything but dirt. Wherever you are, get your pants up and get out of here. I don't want to see you back in here again. All you do is just ruin it for the rest of us." What he said burned me deep, but seeing as how he was much bigger and had the upper hand, I went on and kept my mouth shut for the time being. But that boy was on my time machine, you can bet that. Well, sir, I ambled on up to Mrs. Darnell's and wondered what she would have up her sleeve for me this fine morning. I went in the room and sat in the desk that had been appointed for me the day before. I wondered what she would find wrong with that. I had thought on this many times before this school day, why everybody seemed to be coming down on me for something that I couldn't do anything about. True, I was poor, and true, I was a cotton hiller, and true, I didn't know very much. But to come down on a body for something that they couldn't help was still a ways off for me. It sort of galled me for the uppers to keep up the harassment. I guess that it was just another day in the life of Skeeter Clayton. Mrs. Darnell came into the room, and all of us came to attention. You could have heard a pin drop. "Good morning, children," she said, and you could feel the ice in it. "Morning, ma'am," we all said together. In the future, you'll say, "Good morning, teacher," she said. I knew that she would find something wrong with it. "Yes, ma'am," we all said. "Now, how many of you got all the things that I asked, and let me see a showing of hands?" I held mine high, and she glanced over at me and looked if she didn't approve of anything that I did. "Now, students, will study geography this morning for our first class." Now, geography is the study of the earth and the way that man works and lives. We'll cover many parts of the earth and find out about our fellow man that populates this earth's surface, what they eat and what they do and how they make a living on this planet Earth. That day, same as all others, we studied history, math, spelling, English, writing, and hygiene and physical education. We had a full day every day, and the only time that we had off was at recess, and then you peed and got a drink of water and maybe talked a little to a fella or a gal that you knew from someplace. Then it was back to the drawing board. I didn't have any lunch to carry, and I had a pretty rough time of it when all of the others ate and I didn't. After I had been going for a while, I got permission to go home to lunch, and then I'd go down and get me a hot dog or a moon pie at lunch when I had the money. My life at the school seemed to sort of work itself out, but a disaster was just up the road. One weekend, my sister Lillian Lumbus and her crowd came to visit us. They pulled up in the yard early Sunday morning, and all of them fell out of the gitney and started looking for a place to relieve themselves. All over the yard and around the house and wherever they come to. Finally, they got settled down a little, and all of us came back for a shock. Lily ran out and put a bear hug on Ma and squeezed up to her. Ma didn't like Lumbus very much, so he just held his distance. "Lord a mercy, Rose, I hain't seen you in a coon's age." Then she goes over to Pa and hugs him and feels him up, too. I could see that Ma was taking this with some sour and bitter in her gall. She was remembering how it was the last time Lillian Lumbus was with us. Anyways, after all of us settled in, Pa played the Victrola and Ma fixed dinner for all of them. We had a pot roast that was to be for dinner, and Ma had a couple of batches of hot biscuits and a lot of soppin' gravy. There was boiled cabbage and 3-egg custard or egg pie. Before they got done, there weren't a thing left for even the birds to feed on. They cleaned up all the food and licked the plates. That was the hungriest crowd that I ever saw, and that's no fooling. They had one feller a little older than me, and he was called Moody. This guy was a jerk if I had ever seen one. He was spoiled by his ma and all of his sisters as the only boy. He went around a farting his lips and a pulling something all the time. Anything, a stick or a box or a rolled up paper, anything, just so he could put a string on it. I found out later that they wanted to move in on us and stay a while, and that meant several weeks to several months. But Ma got out of it by saying that we had to move, and that was a fact. The rent was due several months behind. They left late that evening, but promised to come back soon, which I don't think that anyone wanted, even Pa, and Lily had been feeling him up all day and trying to get him off in one of the rooms, but Ma was a-watching them like a hawk. She weren't about to let them get a chance. Lumbus didn't care what they did. He was always making it with one of the other gals. I went back to school on Monday, and when I was a-coming home, there was a black gal waiting beside the road for me. "Hey, white boy, I want a word with yo," she says. "What can I do for ya?" I asked. "Clotal told me to tell you that they done sent her to her grandmother's in South Boston, and she won't be able to see you no more, and she was sorry. That's all I got to say," and she ran off. Well, now, if that don't beat all, I thought just when we was a-getting to know each other a little better, they ups and send her away. Don't matter none, though. Seems I'm going to be moving too in a few days. Mr. Clayton had died in his sleep, and Pa had rented the house from his widow. So we moved that weekend. The people that had sold Pa the Model T came and took it away. I think they gave Pa $25 for it. That's what we moved on. It was a real nice place, and it was set back in the woods. It was a house with 4 rooms down and 2 up, and a kitchen off to the right of the house. I had city water, but an outhouse with a twin holder and a catalog. I never used it anyways. I always went outside or at the school or at the courthouse in town. I really enjoyed the woods when I had a chance, but most of the time I was busy at school and whatever I had to do for a nickel or a dime. That Christmas, William and me got a blank pistol from Santa Claus, and we had fun with it. drawing like Tom Mix, Tim McCoy, Bob Steele, and Ken Maynard. We had a thing going. We wore them in holsters, and when one wasn't looking or the other would holler, "Draw!" and we'd see how fast the other could turn and shoot. They looked just like a real pistol and sounded like one, too. We put gramophone needles in them and shot at targets and became pretty accurate. They'd only shoot about 10 feet. That year, the mill pond froze over and we had a time skating on it. We made us some skates out of bacca sticks and fired them up and scraped the charcoal off and polished them. They went pretty good. Not like bladed skates, of course, but they gave us a plenty of fun. One day we was skating and Mr. Allgood's boy came over and gave everyone some oranges, nuts, candy, and a bunch of stuff. He seemed real nice for a Jewish boy. I guess they had been getting rich off of us for years. Whatever, the peppermint that he gave us and the oranges were just great. Soon the winter was over and the frogs in the pools were laying eggs, and then the little frogs started to holler and carry on. We always had warm rains in the spring. Seems like it rained about all the time. I would get wet coming home from school. It didn't make much difference. When I did get home, I'd dry my coat out on the back of a chair in front of the fire. It was one of those Saturday mornings that all heck broke loose in the hind yard. Someone had brought Lambus and Lily's crowd and dumped them off and took off before we knew what was going on. "Lord God Almighty, what's going on, Lily?" Ma shouted. Aunt Lily just stood there. She had a pair of twins that was white-headed and all the other ones. Edna, Rosie, Moody, and Lillian. All of them stood there out in their yard and commenced to crying. "Lord of mercy, Rose, they done throwed us out of a house and home. We ain't got any place to go. Will you let us stay till Lambus finds us a place for us to rent?" "Well, I reckon so, but I'll have to speak to Tom about it," Ma lowed. "Let me talk to him, Rosie. I got a lot on my mind, and I hope that he can help me to get shed of it. Y'all come on in the house, and I'll fix you some victuals." The first thing that the twins did was to poop all over themselves, and Aunt Lily made Edna clean them up. The rest were looking in the house and under the house and in the kitchen for whatever they could come up on. Ma set about fixing them some fried meat and eggs and cheese with biscuits and gravy and lasses and a hot kettle of coffee. They let into this feed like red shote in short trough. I want to tell you, them folks finished that food off in no time flat. As soon as old Moody got through at the table, they started looking for my stuff that I had under the back of the house. He squeezed onto it and started to pushing it and a fart in his lips. What it was is a couple of bucket lids with a small nail through the center with another stick running up for handholds on it. I had strings leading down each side of the stick where you could guide it with. In other words, Pearl on the right and you go right and vice versa. Well, sir, old Moody took charge of my contraption as if it was his very own idea, which proceeded to tick me off in the worst way. I had made some roads back in the woods, and I drove the contraption around them. Moody proceeded to change them around to suit his own likings. I took this up with Ma, but she said that I should let Moody have his way for a while because he was a guest, and in a few days he would be gone. She also pointed out that they were hungry and hadn't eaten for a spell. I could attest to that for sure. That night I had to sleep with him, and he always had this habit of jumping in the middle of the night and taking covers with him and mumbling something like hub, hub, hub. Aunt Lily told me that I would have to be careful of little Moody because he was so pitiful with all his ailments. But that night I weren't in no mood to put up with little old Moody, and when he started his act, I up and knocked the heck out of him. There was these stairs that led up to the second floor, and he went down them a-barreling to the floor. He woke up real fast and straightened himself out. They all got mad at me, and Ma gave me several licks, but it was worth it, 'cause he didn't do that any more while he was there, which was about 3 weeks. Pa got Lillian a job in the factory, and she gave her folks all her money and didn't pay any board, and this really ticked off my sisters pretty bad. We were all sitting around the fire one night, or as close as I could get, which was way out back. Ma had been singing, and the others had been joining in with her. I saw Aunt Lily looking at Pa and giving him the eye. Finally, she says, Tom, I got something to talk over with you in the other room. This is private, Rose. I just can't tell anyone. All right, Lily, I'll oblige you, Pie said. I can't see why you can't tell him here, Lily. Ma says, this ain't nobody here but family. This is real private, Rose, and needs some attention, Lily says. I bet, I thought. They went in the room and shut the door. I could hear scuffling around in there, and I could see Ma getting nervous. They'd been in there for a spell, and Ma had tried to look through the keyhole. I guess that they had covered it over. And she tries the door, and it wouldn't move. I could hear Lily a-groaning, and finally I heard her say, Lord, I'm coming home, hallelujah. The scuffling stopped, and they both came out, a-sweating and red in the face. I finally got it straightened out, Rose, she lowed. Tom showed me how. I don't take to no woman in the other room with my man. Would it be sister or not, I'm here to tell you that. Now, Rose, weren't no harm at all. And Tom and me, we's a-talking on how Lambus and me could get us a house and be on our way. We could just leave the oldest one here, and she could send us her money, and we could live on it till we get on our feet. Lambus is supposed to come back this weekend, and he'll know something by then, I know. That's the best place for you, with your husband in your own house, 'cause it ain't never been a house big enough for two families in it at one time. I thought I'd load that. And so it went, and we all went off to bed, and Moody didn't jump up with the covers anymore. Things went as well as could be expected for the next few days. Then old Lambus arrived, and he was real gone. He looked like he hadn't eaten in a spell. When he went to the supper, he made up for it in a big way. He cleaned out all that he could get his hands on. The way they did it back then was the big uns always ate first and the little uns ate last. Like if they had chicken, the big uns got all of it. The good pieces, at least, the least ones got chicken necks and ribs of the chicken. And if there was any meat, we got the gravy. This time there weren't anything left over for us but the gravy and biscuits. Old Lambus just kept a-sitting and didn't move when all the rest was gone on over to the house. Ma kept a-looking at him with a mean eye, but he just kept sitting. When the bread got done, Ma came over and frailed it out on the table on a plate. Well, sir, old Lambus reached for it, and Ma came down on his hand with the hot pan. That'll teach you to try to be a hog. These kids ain't had any food, and you ate all the others. And now you are trying to get theirs, Ma said. Old Lambus was nursing his hand in a hollering, Rose, you shouldn't have done that. All I wanted was something to taper off on. About this time, Aunt Lily came in the kitchen, and she saw Lambus all hunkered down over and holding his hand. What in the world is wrong with you, Lambus? She hollered. Rose hit my hand with a hot pan, he lowed. Why, Rose, why did you do that? Lily asked. 'Cause I didn't have something bigger, and he was a-trying to eat the little one's food. Well, we're going to be out of here real soon, Rose, and you won't see us no more. Now, hold on, Lil. We can patch things up. Let's not be going off half-cocked at all. True, Rose done burned my hand and bruised it too, but I had no business trying to get at the bread for the little uns. Old Lambus could see his easy thing a-going down the drain, and his old lady was the cause. I hain't come up on no place yet, though, and I've been a-trying. There just hain't any folks that wants a sharecropper till come time to plant. I'm getting it done, Rose. You mark my word for it, I'll get it done. I have to have Lillian's paycheck this week to sort of hold me over till I can find something. Tom could let her have $1 or $2 to keep her happy. Lil, you take care of Tom, and now see that his coffee is poured and his biscuits hot, if you see what I mean. I ain't having no more of that talking in other rooms, Ma says. If there is any taken care of, I'll see to that. Well, now, Rose, I was just trying to keep things smoothed over for you. Soon's I get that money, I'm hitting the trail for the country and a house. Rosen, if you could see your way clear to give me several of them biscuits with an egg or something in them, I'd be much obliged to you. I'll see what I can do, Ma says grudgingly as she went back into the kitchen. When Lillian came home that night, Lambus put the arm on her for her money. Well, Pa, you can have what's left. I went by the company store and got me a few things. She only made $20 a week, and she had spent it all but $5. Pa took all of my sisters' and brothers' money and gave them a couple of dollars back. I tell you, they weren't a bit happy with the cousin thing. So Lambus took the money and tried to put the arm on Pa for some more, but Pa weren't giving a thing. It just ain't no use, Lambus. I'm in enough trouble with Rose now. I don't need any more for you covering your crowd. Well, I tried, Tom. I'll sure get them off of you. You can bet on that. I sure hope so, 'cause this is a causing hell in my family being here all the time. Ma had the biscuits ready all at once, and Lambus headed for the tall grass with a smile on his face. Things didn't get any better. They got worse, if anything. For me, I got a long lunch break one day, and I came home for lunch. When I got there, Lambus's crowd was up at the table, and they were a-hogging it all. I tell you, Ma says you'll just have to wait to the second table. It's all gone, as you can plain see. She knew as well as I did that I couldn't wait, and I had to go on back hungry. That sure put a sour feeling towards the Lambus crowd for me. They were eating all of the victuals, and Moody was taking over my stuff as fast as he could. Pa was still messing with Lily, and Ma was a-getting madder by the minute. Lillian was bringing fellas home on the weekend and taking up the house, and this just put all of the gals at a disadvantage. Just about then, all hell broke loose. Lambus came in and had them a place in the country. He brought a truck and carted off all of our groceries and anything else that wasn't red hot or nailed down. It was one heck of a relief to see them gone, no matter what they took. One thing that always hung with me was that Moody, we all growed up, and I went into the Army in World War II, and we all got banged up. Well, sir, Moody was classified 4F and didn't have to go. He started up a little old furniture factory with 2 work hands, and he got some government contracts and expanded into a growing Jessie. When I came out all crippled up, old Moody had a plant and $100,000 in the bank. I couldn't even get a job, me and a few other million men. Sometimes things just don't add up to the right figures at all. Getting back to the story, I started to do well at school and made me good grades and was accepted as well as one could expect. I got to be friends with a boy that was named Ben. He was a doctor's kid and was going to be one himself one day when he got bigger. In the meantime, he was my friend and brought me stuff when he came to school, things like sandwiches and apples and sometimes a piece of cake that we shared at lunchtime. In return, I helped him with his work. The math was easy for me and hard for him, so I helped him like that. They came around with this welfare milk, and I never did like milk much because I never had much, I guess. Anyways, I got a pint every morning, and I would drink a little and trade the rest of it to him for whatever he had in his lunchbox. One day the teacher caught us and started in on Ben for drinking my milk. Why, you're one of the richest kids in school, and here you are drinking that lint dogger's milk, and your pa could buy this school, milk and all. Ma'am, you got it all wrong, I told her. I was a-swapping some of my milk for whatever Ben had in his box for lunch. Well, that all right, but the relief people wouldn't look kindly on the arrangement. They want the cotton hillers to get the milk. These bleeding hearts, frankly, I think it's like pouring water down a rat hole. You ain't going to kill the rat, and it's here to stay. With this, she went off and left us alone, and I went on a-swapping the milk for whatever Ben had to trade. I got into the chicken-raising business that spring and had a blast of raising chickens. Gaither Hobgood had a couple of black giants that were left over from some fellow who ordered up some and had more than he wanted for his backyard, and he gave me 2. I didn't know what they were just chickens. I got some wire from first one place and then another and made a pen out in the woods. But I had one mean rooster, and he would always get out and go on a prowl. Even with one wing cut, he could always make it out and fly over the fence. One day he got out and went up to a feller's house and attacked a little kid and scratched him up real bad. The feller came down to our house and said the rooster had to go or he was taking action against the owner, which was me. So that night we had chicken and dumplings. That feller was happy and the family was happy, and I was the one in the lost. And that's the end of chapter 23. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I hope you guys had a nice Labor Day weekend. And I will be back later with either another chapter tomorrow or something else that I'm thinking about. I will talk to you guys later. God bless. Bye-bye.